Hello everybody, this is Paco3D.art and welcome to one of my lessons in Introduction to Maya. So today we'll be covering what is the snap tools within Maya, which you can find the three buttons up here. And we're gonna do snapping for the grid, but also we're gonna be doing snapping with the curve. And also we're gonna be doing snapping to points. However, as you've noticed, essentially all the snapping is happening within the pivot point of the object, which is the center on the movement, rotation, and scale. So we're going to have a little bit of introduction at first on what is the pivot point and what is the pivot point is used for, but also go through the grid options and how to create a curve. Let's commence the lesson. So a pivot point is essentially a designated reference center where the movement, the rotation, and the scale happens from that designated point, essentially being the spirit of the object. So if we have the rotation that happens from the sphere, it's kind of easy to understand what is the center because it's very circular and everything happens from that given point. However, if you have a more irregular shape like a prism or a cone, it's not that clear where the center can be unless you're looking at it from above or from the side. But that's essentially where the snapping is going to be. So the snapping is going to happen from the pivot point, and we're going to explore a little bit on how to change the position of the pivot point in the future, but it's important to understand what is a pivot point. So let's discuss a little bit of what is snapping. So what is snapping? So snapping is a tool feature that aids with a precise location on placing objects within the scene while you're using the pivot point of the object in order to place them in different parts of the scene. However, there is a concept that I would like to introduce and talk a little bit on why snapping is important within 3D graphics. So we've got two eyes in order to understand perception on where things are placed within a scene. So thinking about it this way, if you have a plane, and of course we allow us to paint. So if we have, say we have a scene like this where you have a cone, or not a cone, like a cone and a cylinder, and we have a box as well, right? When you have two eyes, one eye can understand what's further behind and what's further in front. Think about it this way, like if you're playing Super Mario 3D World on the 3DS, it's very easy to understand where things are being placed. But whenever you are using a screen, it's almost like you are interacting with something that's flat, right? So it's really hard to understand when you're looking at it through it as a screen, right? You are really only seeing it as a singular eye where it doesn't understand the perception on where things are. And I will show you a bit of an example on what can happen if you are inside of Maya. So say that you're looking at this and you're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I can see those two cubes are exactly in place on the table. But in reality, if we decide to like zoom out a little bit and see what's actually happening, we got a cube that is essentially on the floor perfectly fine, but then we've got a floating cube, so we don't essentially understand how that perception is happening. And this is why snapping is so essential. So we can find the snapping tools up here, like I said already earlier. And let's first discuss what is the grid option and how we can use grid options alongside with snapping to the grid. So before we go in depth about talking about the snapping to the grid, I just want to explain really quickly what is the grid. And so the grid is essentially think about it this way. It's like a waffle, right? It's like a little waffle with a grid that goes like that, and then it goes like this. And when it comes to the snapping, we're going to be doing the snapping within these points, right? And when it comes to the settings of the grid, you can change the distance between these. So you can say, okay, I want this to be like X amount of centimeters, or, like which, 1 unit equals 1 centimeter as well. And you can set, okay, so how wide and how further apart these pieces are. And when it comes to the grid, it's great if you want to do anything with modularity. So I don't know who here has played The Sims, but The Sims, everything is set up to be, okay, each of these boxes here is essentially 1 meter times 1 meter. So it makes it a lot easier for pieces to be put together. And especially if you play a lot of video games, old school video games even, things are set up in very modular ways, so the environments can be built a lot faster. So going to Maya, if you do want to activate or deactivate the grid, you will find a button. It is located up here where it says grid, and that activates or deactivates the grid very easily. So say that just to get started with a little bit of grid or with snapping, just to get out of the way, shift, right click, I'm just gonna make a cube, and I'm gonna press T for tweaking, and I'm just gonna make this 10 units, so you can see very clearly where that's snapping, but also gonna give everything 2 subdivisions. And now that I've created that cube, if I do any snapping, you will see how it is snapping in the middle of that grid. However, let's say that you want to change the size of the grid and you want to make the grid half the size, just to say. We can open the grid options by right-clicking on this button here, where you got grid, right-click, grid options, and you will get this diagram here, which is essentially the tool options of the scene. So if we, by default in the scene, if you open this project, I've already predefined the grid settings because I'm a huge fan of the settings. But you might have, if you reset the settings here in Edit, Reset, you might have something like this, which is a lot smaller. And now if we're gonna use this as a snap with a much smaller grid, so we got Reset, Apply, smaller settings. Now if you hold down X, you go like that. You can see now how the grid is behaving by holding down X and moving to this grid instead. So if you want to go back and set up the grid how I had it, just to give a little bit of a theory on summary on these units here and what you're changing here. Let's change the screen to be here, the Maya one, press F1. So when it comes to length and grid, the width, this is essentially the size of the grid. So the 12 units is actually from here all the way there. So this is 12 units, 12 times 12. So here it says it is 12, but in reality it's actually 24 times 24 if you're looking at it this way, yeah? So this is 24 squares, right? But when it comes to grids every 5 units, it's essentially saying, okay, so can you please, so let's put blue. And it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the main grids where it's like every 5. It's going this way, and then another 5 here. And another 5 there. right? And it will be a lot easier to see this one, so change the colors of this one here. But then it's subdivided 5, so you are dividing each of these. And let's change this to this grain here. Subdivision. So this is now dividing 5 times for each of these grids. So it's a little bit hard to understand. I usually take away the subdivisions entirely because I find it a little bit distracting. So what I do instead, just to simplify it. And so what I do, I just go, all right, let's do 1 meter, and it's dividing, every 10 centimeters, and there's no subdivisions applied. And now I've got a grid that's a lot simpler and easier to work. However, if you're doing anything that's a little bit more complex, feel free to add subdivisions in there very easily. Okay. Now that we have discussed a little bit about snapping to the grid, let's go next with snapping to curves. So before I disclose what is snapping to curves, I just want to say that it is not just the curves, but you can also do snapping to edges. This is both edges and curves. So if we go to my, I'm gonna provide this opportunity now to show, okay, if you ever want to duplicate an object, you can use, whenever you're using the move tool, you can hold down shift, and then if you go on top of any of these parameters here where it says clone, then it enables you to duplicate, just like that. And I'm gonna use this to now snap on the edges of the object. So you can click here once, snap to curves, and that will snap now to curves. However, just so we can see the edges on the objects, we are also gonna click, if you go here in this panel, you're gonna see this one here. So it's like a little cube that's blue, says wireframe unshaded, and that's gonna enable you to see the curves. Now, when it comes to snapping to curve, if you try to move this while we've got this on at the moment, nothing happens. And this is because it's really, really hard to use a snap to curves just very easily. So in order to understand where the pivot point is on the curves, I'm also going to activate X-ray. So we're going to be activating both wireframe unshaded, but also X-ray. And this is going to enable me to see, okay, the lines between. So you have to move it twice. So you have to move first wherever that edge is once, and then move it again. And you see it's kind of hard to notice, but it did do a snap for a second there. So you go move once, move it very close to that line, and then now it snaps. So now it is snapping to that line. So I'm gonna do that again. So take that off, and I'm gonna do this time so let's find another. So I'm just gonna take it to that object there. I'm gonna, this time, instead of using this, I'm gonna hold down C for caramba. Move that there. And then now I'm just gonna do that again, and now it should snap to that object, you see. It's taking a little bit, so I'm gonna move that again. Move it here. Hold down C for caramba. And now that is snapping to that edge. It takes a little bit of getting used to. But just to show that the snapping works on curves as well, we obviously need to have a curve. So we're gonna go here to the shells where it says polymodeling. We're gonna click on the first one where it says curves. And I'm gonna move to the first top view. So I'm just gonna go top view here. Zoom out a little bit. And I'm just gonna maybe do something along here. I'm gonna click on the third icon here. If you can use any one really, it doesn't really matter. It's just for, and feel free to explore and create some of these curves, but I'm just gonna make a very basic curve by clicking here, 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 just like that. Something very basic. when it comes to creating curves, it's very similar to the problem that I discussed earlier on perception. When you create a curve in 3D view with perspective, the curve can get a bit funky and it becomes a bit weird. It's a lot better to just do the top view or side view or front view, and that way it will be a little bit more accurate. And now that we have done this curve, just to make it a bit more fun, now you can select this, hold C. So go to Move Tool, hold C, and now I'm just gonna move that here. First, remember, you have to move it, and let's move this like up to space for a little bit. Move it like this. And now you can see that line, and this is why you will not be able to see the line behind it. So you go X-ray mode. Then you place that pivot point very close to that line. First without holding C, and then you hold down C. And now that should snap there. As you can see, it teleported like Son Goku. Feel free to have a bit of a play. Pause the video if you feel like it. And we're going to talk next on snapping 2 points. Very good. So we are getting near the end of the lesson here. And this is perhaps my favorite way of doing snapping. So let's talk about snap to points. Snap to points is essentially snapping to vertex or vertices. So I'm just going to give a very, very quick summary on what is a vertex or what a vertex is. And as I am doing this already, I'm going to talk about edges and faces as well. So when it comes to the anatomy of an object, I'm just very quickly going to take off X-ray. It's a bit easier to understand what we're looking at. And I'm going to use the opportunity to do isolate an object. So if I press this button here, it's going to hide everything else momentarily. And now we're just focusing on the object itself, and you can also use Control 1. So now that we've isolated this object, I'm going to talk to you what are the points that this is regarding about, and these are vertices. So and I'm going to discuss and talk about this in depth in a future lesson. If you hold right click, just right click alone, and then you go to vertex, these are points. All right. So if you ever select any of these things, this is a point. And whenever you are, moving with snapping to, with snapping to points, you're essentially going to be snapping to one of these points within the geometry. However, if you have 2 points connected in between, this is a edge. And if you have 4 edges that is inside of here, this is a face. Okay. Anyways, I don't want to get too in depth with this just yet because, that's a future lesson. But when it comes to snapping, say that we have another clone again. If you hold down V for Vendetta, now this is where you can do the snapping here, and it snaps to the different objects. So let's do X-ray so we can see how the pivot point is snapping to those areas there. So that is snapping to points. Okay, so we take away now the isolation, and we do a little bit of snapping around. We can see how now this is snapping to all the different geometry here. You'll be surprised how common this is. It's very common with just setting up rigging, setting up modeling things. Sometimes you need to say you've got a character, the character has a belt, you might do snapping to a certain part of the hip, so then you've got details that are snapped to places. Or say that snapping is a very, very important part of doing modeling. So yeah, that's snapping with points. Okay, very well done, guys. So this is the end of the lesson. For a little bit of a recap. So we have covered doing snapping with the grid. We have done snapping with the curve as well. But also we have done snapping with points. For the next lesson, however, we are going to be covering how to edit and move the pivot point by moving it around the scene, but also by snapping it. And we are going to do an exercise that's a little bit more in-depth with a combination of both doing the snapping, but also moving the pivot point and editing the pivot point in the scene. Well done. Remember that it is a lot of work to make this video, so if you want to continue watching any of these videos, feel free to subscribe. If you like this video, please click on like. If you've got a friend or if you've got a family member, anyone who's learning Maya, feel free to share this video to that person. Or if you've got any questions regarding the lesson or anything you're curious about or any improvements that I can do with the video, feel free to also comment. But yeah, I will see you very soon in the next lesson. I'm really looking forward to see you there. See you, everyone.